5-judge bench headed by Chief Justice of India, D.Y. Chandrachud, ruled against legalizing same-sex marriage today. This has left the majority of the LGBTQ community with several questions. Can one adopt a child as a same-sex couple? Can same-sex couples buy a house together? Can same-sex couples invest in mutual funds? And many such frequently asked questions that we attempt to address on this telecast today for you. Joining us on this platform is Dr. Adish C. Agarwala, Senior Advocate, President of the Supreme Court Bar Association. Also joining us is Mr. Anand Grover, Senior Advocate, Supreme Court of India. Thank you very much for speaking with us. Mr. Grover, I'll begin with you, sir. Thank you and appreciate you taking out the time. Of course, the first question that we are flashing on our screens is the most common one and something that, of course, also pertains to what transpired in the Supreme Court today. Can you have a same-sex marriage ceremony tomorrow? Mr. Grover, what is the answer to that? What we know is that you can have a marriage, but you cannot legalize it. You cannot get a certificate for it, or you cannot register it.
Yes, you're absolutely right. Anybody can perform any customary practices or whatever they want to do. But the issue before the court was whether same-sex couples can actually register their marriage and it is given due recognition because there is, in our view, inequality and discrimination between people who are heterosexuals and those who are same-sex couples. The court has made it very clear, according to the court, that firstly, there is no fundamental right to marry, which in my opinion is an incorrect view, but that is open to further discussion later on in other proceedings. And I'll give you a very simple answer to that, not a legalese answer. Let's assume for a moment, tomorrow, Parliament says that nobody can marry at all, okay? What would any lawyer do? They would go to the court, either the High Court or the Supreme Court, and they will assert their fundamental right to marriage. Because remember what they have said. They have said that even heterosexual couples, their right to marry is not fundamental. That, in my opinion, under international law and otherwise, it is a flawed reasoning. But unfortunately, what happened was, the way the legal arguments were structured did not allow parties to address this argument in the way I think it should have been done. That's one. Secondly, to answer your other point which you raised, which is an important thing, can two same-sexual persons reside in a place, etc., etc.? Can they do things together? They made it very clear after Navte Johar, which decriminalized or read down 377 and made sexual relations between adults by consent legal. After that, two homosexual or non-heterosexual couples can live together. And Justice Chandrachud had actually gone further and actually declared some of the provisions like adoption regulations in law to be unconstitutional. But that is a minority judgment. He was supported by Sanjay Kishan Kaul. The majority has not said that. So that leaves us in a position, in the sense the LGBTQI community in the same position. And I would argue, and I did argue in the court, that in fact, if you don't grant that, what you're really saying, and think about it, it's not a legal argument alone. Think about it. Are heterosexual couples entitled to better rights than homosexual couples if you have decriminalized sexual relations between same-sex couples? And the sexual acts are the same, by the way, they're no different. Heterosexuals engage in penile oral, penile anal sex, as do homosexual couples. So sexual acts are the same. So what is so different? But the fact that you don't give statutory recognition to homosexual couples, it means ultimately you're treating them as second-class citizens. So actually in that sense, I think this judgment is not only unfortunate, it's a retrograde step. And it's, for me, I'm a bit unhappy that some of the best judges of the Supreme Court have laid down that law. But everybody is entitled to their, as Mr. Dinesh Agarwala.
Right, Dr. Agarwala, Dr. Agarwala, the second question that we have for you in this FAQ is, can you adopt a child as a same-sex couple. What we know is that you cannot, and if it's more difficult for you to do that if you are a male same-sex couple, because single men are not allowed to adopt children, and of course 2 gay men going in for this procedure will be considered as 2 single men.
Yeah. So they are not legally entitled to adopt as per the present legal position. And that's why court has not interfered. This is not because court has no power to amend the law. Court has no power to frame the new law. So court has specifically told that it will be on the parliament which can look into. They will not interfere in the affairs of the parliament.
All right. The third FAQ is, of course, Mr. Grover, can you go abroad and get married, as a same-sex couple in countries where it is legal? What we know is that you can do that. You can do that in the United Kingdom. You can do it in the United States. But the fact of the matter is, when it comes to the law of the land in India, that marriage will not be recognized.
Adesh, may I just correct my learned friend, Mr. Adesh Agarwala? The law is not that males cannot adopt. If you're a single man or a single woman, you are entitled to adopt a child. And that is what Justice Chandrachud's judgment actually reiterates. But as a couple, you're not entitled to do that. Please correct that position. Secondly, in the United States, and that's what I argued, the judgment of the United States Supreme Court actually is premised on the fact that there is a fundamental right to marry, and therefore any obstruction in terms of a law or otherwise has to be set aside. Unfortunately, our court did not agree with that position. So therefore, the position in India is different. As I said, because you are not recognizing same-sex couples to marry and recognizing them, that act, the solemnization of the marriage in law, in effect, you're treating them as second-class citizens. And that is very, very abhorrent to our constitutional premise of equality before law, equal protection, and non-discrimination. That is the rub of the matter.
All right. Those are important points, but you also need to understand that there are a number of confusions when it comes to the LGBTQ community and the laws. The number 4 question that needs some pondering over is, can a same-sex couple buy a house together, Dr. Agarwala? While 2 people can buy a property together, only relatives bound by blood or marriage can apply for home loans jointly. Is that true, Dr. Agarwala? Dr. Agarwala?
That couple, it is not necessary. Idhar aao. Ye awaaz kyun nahi? Idhar aao.
All right, so there's a problem with your audio. We'll connect with you momentarily once you fix that. Obviously, what you just said was heard. Mr. Grover, would you want to answer that question for our viewers, sir?
Well, two persons of any sex can apply for a loan together. There's no difficulty in that. But a lot of institutions do not recognize them as couples in law, which is the legal position. Now, for example, there are facilities available to heterosexual couples which are not available to homosexual couples. So that is what Justice Chandrachud in his judgment has said should be actually outlawed. Now, I don't know whether the other judges have actually addressed this specific issue. Until we read all the judgments, we won't know whether on this issue the other judgments are silent. If they are silent, then that would mean that any kind of restriction which is imposed on homosexual couples, for example, taking out a loan as a couple, etc., or, for example, pensionary benefits. And I know Justice Ravindra Bhatt has also addressed it, and I think addressed it positively. I've not read the whole text, but that would mean that you cannot actually disallow pensionary benefits. So we need to see the judgment as a whole to find out who has said what. As you know, on each issue, what is the majority, we have to actually discern and then answer those questions.
All right, moving on to number 5. Can you give inheritance rights to my partner to your partner? If yes, what taxes will they have to pay? And of course, what we know is that the inheritance can only happen by will, Mr. Grover, not through laws of succession, but without a will, it will still go to your class 1 heirs and so on. The onus has been left to the Parliament to formulate inheritance laws for queer couples. Mr. Grover.
Yes, you're absolutely right, because the law of succession will prevail, and the gay, homosexual, non-heterosexual couples will not be considered to be a family unit, because the moment you marry, and as far as class 1 heirs are concerned, those are only under Hindu law. But all other religious laws, whether they are Muslim, Parsi, etc., Hindu, Parsi, Christian, all of them actually allow succession by marriage. That is not permitted until a marriage between a heterosexual couple is recognized in law. Only then will property be devolving on to the person who has actually been alive after the other person has died. So you are right. Until Parliament changes those laws, it won't happen. And let me tell you, that is the most difficult area in terms of succession, because the laws are so complex in different religious communities. You'll have to tinker with all laws, whether it's Muslim law, Parsi law, Christian law, or Hindu law. They are very complex. I mean, the concept of Hindu undivided family, etc., class 1, etc., they're all different in all laws. And actually, the court never took it upon itself to go into that. They only considered whether Hindu marriage, Special Marriage Act would be one of the conduits of recognizing marriage, and they rejected it. And they also went into adoption, etc. But that was to show that it was discriminatory against homosexual couples. Because, for example, why should a homosexual couple not allowed to adopt? And the issue there, as Justice Chandrachud addressed, is what is in the best interest of the child? If it is in the best interest of the child that he or she or a transgender child can live happily with even a homosexual couple, there is no reason why a homosexual couple should be denied that kind of adoption. So he has actually ruled those rules as unconstitutional. As I said earlier, we have to see what the other judgments say on this. Until we look at the thing with a fine-tooth comb, we won't be able to tell you immediately what the law is.
All right. Dr. Agarwala, can same-sex couples invest in mutual funds? What we know is that two individuals who have their KYC in place can do that. There is also an option or a provision of either a survivor, inheriting and bequeathing whatever is in that particular investment. Is that true? And is this a form of succession which the queer community can take advantage of?
As husband and wife, as couple, they can't. But anybody, any two persons, unknown persons also can invest. There is no problem. Brother, sister, any two human beings, they can jointly invest, and that can be done either of survivors. Anybody can get this. If somebody dies, the survivor will be having the right, but not as husband and wife in the present case.
All right. Moving on, Mr. Grover. Can I live with my partner without the fear of getting harassed? In fact, the Supreme Court had already said to the government to ensure that there is no harassment of LGBTQ couples. They cannot be interrogated about their gender identity or sexual orientation randomly. But on ground, sir, that is not exactly the case. They still face harassment. They still face harassment when it comes to renting out apartments as well throughout the country.
Well, you are absolutely right. First of all, the law, even before today's judgment, was that if I am a non-heterosexual person, I have a partner who is not heterosexual. If I am in a relationship, then if there's any harassment, I can go to court. We regularly take our clients to court and get protection orders. But the discrimination is meted out, stigma exists in this area. Families don't want that kind of situation. They actually discriminate against their own children. So that now has to be strengthened. And what Justice Chandrachud and the majority have said is that that relationship cannot be interfered with. So on that issue, we are very clear now. Any non-heterosexual couple, their relationships will not be interfered with by anybody, and the police have to be sensitized. Other members of society have to be sensitized, like what you're doing today in your program is actually sensitizing. When Mr. Agarwala speaks of this, he's an esteemed member of the Bar Association and the president of the Bar Association of the Supreme Court. So when he says something which is empathetic to the LGBTQI community, then actually the message is sent. It sensitizes people. So that the whole of the court is very clear, whether it's the Supreme Court or any High Court, that a relationship between two people cannot be interfered with, provided they are adults and by consent. But society doesn't necessarily imbibe that value system. So they have to be sensitized. And if there is an egregious wrong committed on them, then the police, which also must be sensitized. And I may tell you, there are a lot of cases of blackmail, even within the police. But we have been trying to sensitize them also. And we hope that in the future, these things will actually not be happening as often as they are today.
All right, moving on, Dr. Agarwala, can same-sex couples get a home loan is what we are trying to understand. But the, of course, obvious answer is that due to lack of documents required, joint home loans can only be acquired if a marriage is registered. Is that true?
I don't feel marriage is required for any home loan. It is not necessary that only husband and wife can obtain home loan. Any two persons, any 3%, 4%, and of any sex. They are not supposed that it has to be what I feel, although I've never represented banks, etc. I'm not legally aware. But as per law, loan can be taken by any person, whether one male, other female, whether they are married or not. It is the satisfaction of the bank that the repayment will be there. Legally, I don't feel there is any bar that these people, same-sex people, can't have the home loan. That is not correct. They can have home loan. There is no requirement. There should be valid legal marriage. This is my perception. And Grover Saab is very seasoned lawyer, my senior.
But Mr. Agarwal, you're absolutely right. Why should I?
So what are your thoughts on this, about this home loan issue, and what challenges await queer couples if they go for a home loan?
Like Mr. Agarwal rightly said, any two persons, even if we are not in a relationship, you and I, or Mr. Agarwal, Dr. Agarwal and I can go to the bank and say, look, we want a loan jointly in our name and we want to purchase a house. We will repay it like that. So that doesn't require any kind of relationship. So that is a misconception on the part of people that if you go there and say, no, we are a couple, they'll say it's irrelevant. We are not interested in whether you're a couple or not. You want it in your joint names, jointly or severally, you are liable to repay the loans. That's the end of it.
All right. The last FAQ, do I have any legal recourse should my family decide to take steps against my relationship? The Supreme Court has directed the police to ensure that freedom is not curtailed and protection given in the case of a police complaint filed by an LGBTQ person against their family. Mr. Grover?
This is a normal, very common occurrence, and we go to court. I'll give you an example. Large numbers of people who realize they are actually, they are either male or they are homosexual or they are transgender. They run away from the family. The family actually tries to coerce them into not pursuing their sexuality or gender orientation, and they are forced to then run away either on their own or if they have a relationship with somebody else, and they go to a larger city. So Mumbai, Delhi, etc. They are actually from the rural areas. We get so many cases, and then what we do is we actually get them into a shelter, And after we get them into a shelter, we approach the High Court. I mean, I have personally done about 20 cases of these type. And the court only has to be satisfied they are adults, they want to be in a relationship, and the parents cannot interfere. The moment that is done, the court passes an order. So the law is very clear on that now, and the police are also being sensitized. And unfortunately, it's not happening as it should. So the Supreme Court today has made it very clear that they need to be sensitized. Hopefully, the government will put in the money in it, because it requires money to actually have sensitization from the legal services authorities, the national, state level, district services authorities. They actually do a good job in getting protection orders for LGBTQI community, but also they are not as active on these issues as they should be. It depends on the local legal services authority. But a lot of the NGOs who are functioning in this area, in Delhi, Mumbai, metropolitan cities, there are a lot of them and they help out, but that's not sufficient. It has to be done at the legal services authority. And I hope under the leadership of Dr. Agarwala, the Supreme Court Bar Association lawyers will also get into the act. I'm sure he'll agree with me on that.
All right.
Yes, sir.
Dr. Agarwala, concluding thoughts, sir?
Possible.
We've run out of time.
Yeah,
Okay.
this is what growers have said. It may be not possible neither for the Bar Association nor even, I think, our legal services authorities to propagate that people should adopt this way of life. That is correct that there should be protection. Government, our Grover Saab is a seasoned leader. He is a pioneer of human rights. So he deals with these matters and obtain the orders from the court that for their safety and nobody should put any harm. That is possible, but propagation, I think, maybe.
No, but I need your support with
difficult.
Dr. Agarwala.
All right.
Sorry.
The lawyer.
Well, I think the whole community could do with some support. After all, it has been a setback for them. Mr. Grover and Dr. Agarwala, appreciate you joining us.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.